Now we are finally live.
Finally live, yay.
It's finally live. It's working today, it looks like. Very nice. So I just want to tell everyone while we wait for people to find us. My name is Linda Kvist and I'm in Sweden. And I try to do a live chat every week with people that have inspired me in my own genealogy journey. And today I have Rob Warthen here, who's behind DNAGedcom. And if you're watching, please say hello in the comments. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. So welcome, Rob.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I was afraid that you didn't hear me.
Yes. I'm trying to also get up the video to make sure I'm caught up and stuff.
Yeah. So
and send out the invites.
Yeah, very good.
And now I got to tell it to stop talking because it's I'm hearing two locations. Okay, so I see the questions up there too, so that helps.
Yeah, good. So finally, we tried this last week, and it wouldn't start the live streaming, so we're doing this today again. And we already have Thomas saying hello from Svenljunga, Sweden, and we have Ove who also says hi, Linda and Rob. So welcome, Rob. And I guess most people that are watching are already into genealogy. And yep. We know that you are in the US, but where are your ancestors from?
So my ancestors are mainly from England on one side. My mom likes to say she's a purebred German, so she's mainly German, but we did find some colonial American, so that made her a little upset. My dad is what we call a purebred mutt, mutt being US for all kinds of places. So he's from Ireland, England, Germany, but he has very deep colonial American history. So we literally are from America on that side. Because it's been 200 years easily, most of my spots.
Nice. Oh, yes. More people are commenting. Hello
yeah,
from Helsingborg and from England, Graham, and we had Mags from Ottawa. Yeah, nice.
Nice.
Hi to everyone. Nice to have you here.
Yes.
So. I have a question for you. I think we start with this question from the guest I had the last time, because that's a good question. So I think this we will start with this one, and it's very high tech. I have it here on my iPad. So I will press play, and hopefully the volume is up. The volume is up. But I want you to pass on the question for the next week's guest, because I want to do this again. Well, so hopefully I will find some guests that want to join.
I'm gonna borrow from Kevin and say he wanted to know what got me into genealogy, what got me, and I'm gonna ask the next person, who inspired you to become a genealogist, and if they're a genetic genealogist, who inspired them to get into genetic genealogy? Was it a speaker? Was it somebody in your family? I'd love to know that.
Great question.
That is a great question. So when I got into genetic genealogy, there was, we had two types of DNA. It was Y DNA and mitochondrial DNA, and autosomal really wasn't even there yet. So who got me into genetic genealogy? I think I kind of just fell into it. I actually have many of you may know, but my wife is adopted. And so how I got into genetic genealogy was I started talking to people called search angels. And they had a question, how do we use this new DNA thing to find birth family? And I just started talking to various people. And I think the person who really got me started was Patty Drabing, Karen Corbeil, CC Moore, Diane, and we had a whole bunch of other people, and I can't remember everybody, so I'm going to stop there. But those are some of the big people who really got me started, and we were all kind of learning and doing it at the same time. We didn't call it genetic genealogy; it was this DNA stuff. But it was actually kind of funny because I used to talk to them about, well, as you know from high school biology class, and some of them had to stop and say, hello, we didn't even have high school biology back then. And I'm going to copy this into Facebook. some people are trying to find. We didn't have DNA back then. We didn't talk about DNA. So a lot of the people that I was talking to. So it was kind of funny how you just think of everybody knows what DNA is and stuff like that now, but back then genetic genealogy was a brand new thing. So that's really my how I got into genetic genealogy story. So thank you, Mags.
Well, you will get to pass on the question for another guest then. So, but then you got really into genetic genealogy, right?
Yes.
You then developed tools for it.
Yes. So I actually got I remember one. I think it was 2012. I was sitting in I went to my first family tree DNA conference, the admin conference, and Cece Moore asked me if I'd be willing to stand up because she knew some of the tools I was working on. It's like, would I be willing to stand up and kind of talk about it at the end of her presentation? So that was the first time I had I had like 5 minutes to talk, and she was like, okay, how's he going to talk and stuff like that. But I tend to be a little nervous talking and stuff like that, but it went pretty well. And at the end of, after I presented this, it's a thing called GedCom utility. It was a little DOS application that you typed out the whole name, and and people got tired of typing GedCom utility space and all that stuff. So, and then everybody wanted it, and I couldn't keep it up to date. So I was like, okay, let's create a website. And that's the basis. That was the first DNAGedcom.com website, was downloading chromosome browsers for family tree DNA, because back then you could only look at, I think, 3 at a time. They didn't have any CSVs, and people didn't even think, a lot of these companies didn't even think about providing that kind of information. They just thought people would look things on the website, but we needed that information to be able to do our work. And so that was the basis of starting up everything.
Yeah, I think that's amazing, because the companies, they provide us with some tools, and then there are often people that are sitting at home and thinks, I want to know this and I want to have this information, and then they just make the tools for themselves to start with, and then for everyone else as well. So I think that's really cool, because it's like the genetic genealogy users who kind of push the development forward.
Yeah. And that's actually what I was. I wasn't allowed to work on other tasks or do other things. They allowed me to work on my wife's case, but they weren't allowing me to work on any other case. If there's anything else came up and stuff like that, like, no, you got to go just work on the tools. Here, we'll tell you what to do. So it was fun in those early days, since we had so many new features, new things that people needed. So people were feeding me ideas. That's kind of something I've missed a little bit right now, because I used to have people feeding me ideas, and it would be nice to do these big areas and stuff like that. But I don't get that as much anymore, but I do get some of that. And part of it is also just keeping up with some of the requests that do come in and stuff like that. So it's nice, because now I do have somebody that I work with, John Collins, who I work with closely, and have somebody to bounce ideas off and work with and stuff like that. And then we have some other people that I work with that I can get ideas from and stuff like that. But it's really, it was, those early days were really based off of a big group of people. We probably had 20, 30 people in what was called back then Adoption DNA, but turned into DNA Adoption. And a lot of those folks you hear big names in the industry and stuff now. So, but it was cool that we were all working together and learning together.
Yeah, and I got my result in 2013, and I think DNAGedcom was one of the first tools I ever used myself. So yeah, it was good. It was cool. It was already out there when I got my result, and so yeah.
And that's part of the fun thing, is it's been out there for so long, and some people, they just love some of the old tools, and I'm trying to move to some of the new tools. So it's been hard, and for those. I think a lot of you may, if you know about DNAGedcom, we did have some issues with our server this past week. So it's trying to bring up those old tools, but while still doing some of the new tools and new features to make things a lot easier. Because early on, it was, people told us that they told me exactly what they needed, and everybody wanted spreadsheets and stuff like that. So it was built for people who knew what they wanted and how they wanted it. And so now I'm trying to rebuild it and rebrand it to make it much easier to use, but then you still got the people who like the old way. So
It's always those users who want like the more hardcore stuff, and now it's becoming so really user friendly.
Yep. Hopefully, it's getting more user friendly.
Yeah, it is. It is more user friendly.
Good.
Yeah. So, do you have anything? Because I guess there are some people that they have probably heard about DNAGedcom, but they don't know what can I do with DNAGedcom.
Okay. Well, I do have a presentation, some screens and stuff I can show to give people some ideas. And let me see if I can share that screen. Hopefully that pops up there. So you should see a screen. Do you see it, Linda?
Finding so.
Yep.
Yep.
I'm trying to see if it pops up on the Facebook screen.
Yeah.
But I'm basically, like I said, I got started off with this with finding with my wife, Sue. And okay, there it popped up there. Okay. The Facebook is about 30 seconds behind us. So I'm trying to make sure that it actually showed up this time. But this is my wife's adopted mother and her adopted father. And when I first, so Sue and I have only been together for about 10 years now. And when I first met her mother, and when I say mother, that's actually her adopted mother. That's who she knows as a mother. When I first met her, she asked me about finding Sue's birth mother, because this is something that was important to Sue to find at some point. And so I started researching, and let's see here. I'm trying to get the screen to go to the next page. There we go.
Yep.
So actually, it was back in 2010. We actually got to talk. So this is how long ago this was that we started doing this DNA stuff. And we talked to this guy named Matt Kelly, and that was the first person that Sue had ever spoken to who was not her children, who was biologically related to her in some way. But of course, the whole big thing about when you're doing DNA and genetic genealogy, particularly back then, you had so much data to work with, and we didn't know what was important back then. Nowadays, we've kind of worked out this concept of triangulation, tree triangulation. That's easy. That's like, okay, it's obvious now, but back then we didn't know that. So we had to figure out what, with this mountain of data that we were working with, how do we do this? So, of course, being a genealogist, that's awesome. You just love digging into all this stuff. So this is actually Sue with her family. So really, kind of the big thing is you're trying to find, when you're doing this stuff, you're trying to find common ancestors. And so how do you do that? And I'm sitting here moving my hands around when I realize that's not showing up on your screen here, but so I'll just speak to it. So when you're looking at common ancestors, what you're trying to do is you're trying to work back the tree and find where your matches have common ancestors. And then once you have those common ancestors, you need to then bring it forward. So that's really what you're trying to do. You work back, find common ancestors between your matches, and then bring that forward, and then take those people back. So you're going back and forth, up and down these trees all the time. So here's kind of the concept. You start with yourself, and you have trees, and you build up trees, and they build up trees. And so you realize how quickly you actually have a lot of people that you're working with. This is just a third cousin level. So from here, you're trying to find a common ancestor. So let's say we pick this person up here. Are we actually moving? Okay. So we take this person up here, and yes, I do have my mouse there. You then start bringing down. So we build this person down, and you add the child, and you find a spouse, and you add a child, and you find a spouse. So you're bringing people down, and you're trying to see, can I build to a common ancestor? So here we found a match here, we have a match over here, and they have these common ancestors. So we're trying to do that. Now the next step is to do the same thing with each one of these people. So maybe I bring this person back and bring him forward. Do I tie in another match? So really what you're trying to do is you're trying to take these different branches, build them back, and then bring them forward to a current match. And it sounds easy, but literally you're building thousands and thousands of trees. I think I at one point had probably 50 to 100 major trees built. I think I was probably in the 4,000 or 5,000 range when I finally found Sue's birth father. But it's a lot of ultimate work trying to come into there. So there we go. We got that built out. So really, here's a better example, and I'm going to skip through this. That kind of throws everything together. And this is from Kitty Cooper and DNA Adoption put this together. And really, you have a match here. How do they match? And you have other matches. So you see these folks don't have a common ancestor. So you have to work through that and use a tool which is called GWorks right now, but eventually we're moving that into what's called DNAGedcom People. And what you do is you kind of keep building. So here we go. We found these two people tied together. And then from there, we're able to see, okay, let's build this tree down, and we're able to build that into with this big match. So that's really what you're trying to do, is you're trying to take multiple trees, see how they tie together, and build down and figure out how they work in. And here, we had this big match. We figured out how they tied in. We were then able to take this unknown person and figure out how they tie into the trees. So really, how do you do that? So what you do is you start with what's called clusters. So Dana Leeds created this Leeds method. And so you are able to then build from that and come up with bringing people together. That was a fabulous concept. We had the same sort of thing with what's called ADSA, it's sort of a clustering. And I'll show a little bit more about that later. So what DNAGedcom does is allows you to compare a lot of your data from Ancestry, Family Tree, DNA, GEDmatch, MyHeritage, and 23andMe. And based on the type of data that you have, you get different information. And so here's really ultimately what you end up with is something like this, a clustering feature where you have things such as you have a common ancestor. So you can see a little leaf here, there's a common ancestor between those two people. And you can also just go to the tree directly with an ancestor, and that helps you understand and see things. And I see I'm actually up there, so you can actually see me move my hands. Isn't that great? We're all still learning how to do this online stuff. So, and here's an example of the actual, if you drill into this, you can actually look at the list of matches, and then at the bottom, you can actually see the common ancestors that are in the cluster itself. But here's a different way of looking at it. So for that chromosome, you can actually see that cluster, you can actually see the chromosomes that are in there. So for folks, everybody except for Ancestry, of course, Ancestry is the one that chooses not to provide chromosomes. And people hate it when I say they don't have to, but honestly, they don't have to. They have the trees, so they give a lot of information that way. But so for everybody else, you're actually able to look at the chromosomes and see how they lie up. So like here, you can see some of these folks actually line up pretty well in terms of common overlap in a segment. So that gives me a little bit more confidence that these folks are actually related genetically. But then we also have this tool called Chromosome Matrix app. So Don Worth back in 2013, and Linda, you may have actually seen this back then. He created a tool called ADSA. He took the data from DNAGedcom's, the CSV files, and he was able to actually load that and show that in a matrix format. So you basically had in common widths in here, and then you saw the actual segment over here. It was really powerful, and it really was, to me, it's the basis for what clustering tools became later. But it was more at the chromosome level. So it was much more detailed and wasn't as easy to understand. So we've actually taken the new clustering tools and tried to embed those in with a chromosome matrix to kind of bring the two pieces together. So you get ideas of where people have common overlap. So for example, here you see this person doesn't overlap with all these other folks, but he does with these folks out here. So because he's not part of that cluster, there's one thing we know about DNA. You get one side from your mom, and you get one side from your dad. And of course, before anyone says that's not always the case, that there's some strange things. Okay, yes, sometimes that's different, but the majority of the time, the vast majority of the time, is you get 50% from mom, 50% from dad. So since we know that these folks are maybe on the dad side, what's really cool here is we can see here, this person must be on the mom side because they don't match with the other people, even though they overlap in the DNA. So these give you some powerful information to look into.
Yeah, I love that it is so visual. You can really see and understand the information really easy when you see it like that, and not looking in the Chromosome browser or in a matching list. Here you really see how it's all tied together. Love it.
Yeah, early on, everybody's so into spreadsheets and stuff like that. That the people I work with, that's what they wanted. But not everybody's like that. There's a lot of us who are more visual, and I've actually always been a lot more visual myself. So I've actually enjoyed this. I really would have loved to have had these features and stuff back when I was doing the research for my wife. But here we're also adding some new things so those who have seen DNAGedcom probably have not seen this yet, because we've not released it, but this is what we're getting ready to release, where you can actually see all the kits that you have in your list. So everything that you've gathered. And then you can actually drill down into those and see the actual people. So these are a list of your matches, and this is actually anonymized. So the tool has an ability to actually anonymize data. There's a new feature down here where you just click on anonymized names and you just turn that on, and it allows you to actually anonymize all your names. So when you're doing presentations like this, it makes it wonderful.
That's really great. Yeah.
And my last name is Gary. So Warthen is translated into Gary. But if you see Gary somewhere else, somebody else has it, it's a different last name. So you can't guess what people's names are and stuff, because John Collins and I, we're both from a health background industry. And so privacy is super important. So we make sure that you can't work your way around. But you have links here, like this link here. If you clicked on that, it actually takes you out to the matches page. This actually takes you, I'll show you here in a minute. This will actually take you out to the family tree. This will actually you click on this link and you can actually send a message like Family Tree DNA. It'll open up a email. For Ancestry, it'll open up the box so that you can actually send a message that way. And then we have a chromosome browser, so you can actually look at the chromosomes. Again, over here, you're able to filter over all this information. So what's really nice is if you got 23andMe, Family Tree DNA, Ancestry, all these different companies, remembering how to work with all these different interfaces. Now here's one interface. It's all consistent across all the different companies. So you can look at the data and work with it and go to the different pages much easier. And then here's a chromosome browser example. So this is my sister and my two uncles, and you can actually see the chromosomes painted. Now, what's really cool is if you go back to the previous page, you see these check boxes here. You can actually check, you can check as many people as you want. You know, most of the companies only allow you to look at maybe 5, maybe 10 at a time. As many as you want to click on here, you can actually look at everybody that you want to. So I think that's really cool. That's one thing that I think people are still missing.
Yeah.
But it allows you to look at all your chromosomes across all the different companies pretty easily. And then people. So one of the nice things about the DNAGedcom, one of the things that very few people had early on was being able to look at shared matches. So we do have other companies that are starting to do some of this stuff, but we were one of the first, and we actually allow you to search over, again, all the people. So these are all of my matches. They're ancestors. So no surprise that some of my matches have ancestors that have Warthen in them. So I'm able to quickly see. So this over here shows me tree count. That tells me that 2 of my matches have Catherine Tingstrom Warthen, born 1822 and died in 1897. Hey, they have 2 of those folks in there. So I can actually click on that and look at those matches. I can quickly filter over different information. I can actually search if I'm only interested in people from 1700 to 1850. But here's the thing. So a lot of people allow you to look at trees and stuff visually, but for me, unless I have some close folks, and frankly, if I have some close folks, I can figure it out just looking at it. That's just me. But if I'm really working on a hard case, I need to be able to build additional trees. So we actually have an ability, so I can come in here, click on this guy, and say generate out a GEDCOM of this person, and it will actually generate out their GEDCOM and all their information and stuff like that. So that will allow you to paint this into any GEDCOM utility that you want. In fact, I also know that Johnny Pearl is working on a tool that allows you to import the GEDCOM into Wado, and will allow you to do some things. So those are sort of the big things with DNAGedcom and kind of what's coming up on there. I think I also have some stuff on genetic family, which is kind of a little bit more of a, it's a shared system where you can actually do things through a Chrome extension and stuff. But I'm going to kind of skip over that. I don't want to get too deep into too many things. This is kind of a fun, simple things, but here's kind of some ideas. What you can see, just a quick look, is you can actually look at the Chromosome browser within Ancestry. That's kind of our shocking, exciting thing. And how that's done is basically, this is actually my heritage Chromosome browser, but it's embedded into genetic family. So if you're interested in more of that, certainly let us know.
Yeah.
Let me see. So I can talk a little bit about, and I haven't seen anybody popping up questions or anything on the screens.
No,
but
yeah. Just if you have any questions, just write them in the comments, and Rob will answer them. So ask away.
But I'll kind of talk a little bit about what we did this with Sue. One of the big things when you're doing genealogy is it's so important. People think DNA, I'll get everything. All I have to do is look at the DNA, and I'll just build out these trees. It's all wonderful, right? No, that's the hardest part that people don't get. It's like I uploaded my raw data. Where's my tree? So everyone who's been here thought that was it. So literally my GEDCOM utility, my idea with the GEDCOM utility. So this is my concept. The first thing it did was it went out to Google, and Google had a way to find GEDCOMs. It actually would go out and grab GEDCOMs of anybody with the last name Greg, because we knew my wife's last name was baby girl Greg. So that was my original concept of this whole thing. Is I would just go out, grab GEDCOMs, pull them all together, and boom, there'd be an obvious link. I would just tie them all together. So there's at one point I had probably 200-300 Greg family trees. Yeah. As I was collecting them all over, and I was just trying to learn everything about it, and it quickly became that's not the right way to go.
Yeah, especially if the name would have been Smith, it would have been even harder.
Yeah, and Greg wasn't that much easier. It was actually it's a fairly popular, not a Smith, not a Thompson, not a Johnson, but and you guys, I guess, are lucky that you don't have surnames, right? Isn't that how lucky you are?
Yeah, that's how lucky we are. Yeah, right.
You gotta look at which way it is. It's like, am I lucky? Am I not lucky? But you use what you know.
Yeah.
And one of the key things is locations and stuff like that. So pretty much all we knew about the baby girl Greg was that her birth mother's father died from some cancer. And using GWorks, I was able to look at names and stuff like that. So I did find a lot of people had these sort of names. So I threw out Smith, but I looked at some of the closer ancestors, and also saw a lot of people came from Scotland and seemed to be Ireland and Delaware. So those are things that as I was building trees and other trees, I kind of paid attention to, because remember way back when we had all these different branches. So if I see a branch that came from Scotland or Ireland and maybe through Delaware, I paid more attention to those when I was building back, and I started working with those more and bringing down. If I saw somebody coming from Africa, then I would ignore those. Or if I saw somebody coming from Sweden, because she had no Swedish background or anything. So that helped me limit what I was trying to build out. So I did find a Greg who was the right age, but her sister was the right age, but unfortunately she had passed. But what was interesting was the sister's son lived down the street from us when I was in Tawnytown. And then we moved to a place called Thurmont, and her widowed husband lived literally across the street from us.
Wow.
I was like, this is too weird. So she didn't think that her sister would have been, because she's like, if my sister got pregnant and had a baby, I'm pretty sure she would have told me. But just in case, there was about that time that maybe she could have snuck off. So she took a DNA test, and we had a match. It was so exciting. It was even an X match, so it was awesome. It was a 10 centimorgan X match. And then I looked, because I saw the match, and I was so excited. Then we looked at the shared centimorgans, and it was like 44. Okay, that's not it. Looked at the relationship range. Okay, it's third to fifth cousin. It's like, okay, well, but the nice thing is we had a name, and so maybe that Greg actually meant something. And so these are the sort of things you have to look at, all the different hints that you have. So we built that tree back and built it forward. So we were able to go back to John Gregg and Ann Palmer on her tree. And from that, we were able to build a tree down. And we found a man who actually had this family grandfather had passed away from leukemia, which was exactly what we were looking for. So this was like, okay, maybe we're on the right track. So we spoke to some people in that group, had somebody else test, and voila, she ended up being a first cousin, the second cousin. She literally would end up being, according to our guesses, was she would be a first cousin once removed. So again, we didn't build this tree just because of DNA. We built this tree because we went and we tested people. We reached out to people and said, okay, if we find somebody, we know the Greg name, so we're able to build that straight down that line. We were able to go out and test people and stuff like that. So that's kind of one of the things that you have to be willing to do. You have to reach out to people. And back then that was hard. People was like, DNA, what the? I don't want to take a DNA test. You want my DNA for what? Nowadays it's a little easier, but back then, because this is in 2013, 2012 when we were asking her to take the test. So the father side, that was even funner. All we knew is that the father was probably we knew the father was in Maryland 9 months before Sue was born. That's because we knew the birth mother had not left Maryland. But other than that, we didn't know anything else. So the interesting thing, so Matt Kelly is always an interesting person we have here, but I was able to see he matched that first cousin. He overlapped her, but he didn't match her. So if he overlapped her and they had shared the same side of the DNA, then we would know that he was on the maternal side, but he didn't. So at least we knew he was on the paternal side. So that was kind of an interesting thing. You can look at some other people, and Matt Kelly has actually given me permission to use his name. So I always use his name in a lot of different things and talk about him because it's easier. But if you had somebody closer who had maybe a bigger match, you would confirm that they're on the father side or mother side. So you want to make sure you're trying to find people who are surely on one side or another. And Rolf, I'm probably keeping my videos probably pretty high resolution, so I apologize for that. That's something to think about in the future. So where did we start? We had Ancestry. We had some 4th to 6th cousins. We had GEDmatch with some 4th cousins. We had 23andMe, which I was excited about, had a 3rd to 4th cousin. So I was like, that was the closest person I had, but she wouldn't talk to me. All I had was some sort of name. We had some family tree DNA stuff that were very distant, and even family tree DNA, so I had to actually build out these trees and learn some things. And I used GWorks. So I basically, back then, you didn't have very many of these trees. So you had to learn about the people. You had to build out GEDCOMs and upload them to the system. So I built out all these trees, but one of the nice things about building out the trees is you kind of get to learn the names. You see the names over and over again. So even a lot of people nowadays, they don't like to use a lot of automation. They want to build these trees and build the things, particularly if you're working with much more distant cousins. If you're second, third cousins, use the automation and pop it out real quick. But so I started seeing some patterns, and what I found was found some Patterson and Groves and Park Hills. I found this tree here, and I thought these folks seemed to be, might be the great-great-grandparents. Well, to make a long story short, because I was trying to build this piece out. So I had to build from there, and I'm trying to build down. So I kept building down, and I wasn't finding people. So when I looked at that, I wasn't finding people staying in Maryland area. Everybody kept moving west. Everyone kept moving west. So I'm like, okay, I must have something wrong. So what did I do? I stepped back up again. I moved up a level. So I thought this was the right area. I moved back up and started looking at things again. So meanwhile, I eventually find some more surnames, and I'll look for spouses. I'm building people up and back down. I compare things. So every time I build a new person, I upload that kit and say, okay, how does this compare? Do they have more matches and stuff like that? So the one thing that drove me crazy was that third cousin, who I thought had to be a third cousin, she ended up being a fourth cousin once removed. So you have to kind of look further back. You can't assume that those pieces. So once I worked that further back, I found a couple, a family that moved to Ohio, and I'm like, that's not too far away. And then I found that they came back to Maryland. So it's like, okay, good. I kept looking at it. And in our case, we did have some other hints. There were some other pieces of information. It's like, I found a family that looked right. The family lived in the Maryland area, in the county right next door to the birth mother's county. So I was like, okay, this makes things interesting. But again, that doesn't tell us or confirm anything. So we had to take a DNA test. So putting it together, I had a person 23andMe here, Ancestry here, Family Tree DNA tied these folks in. So what was nice is I had somebody on the father's side and I had somebody on the mother's side. So these folks over here helped to build this, make me feel more comfortable in this one. And this person was a pretty close match. So I felt pretty comfortable in that. So I felt like I had the right family. Plus, based on what I knew about this family, I knew his father, the birth father's father was a, I can't remember the term, but basically he ended up being a lawyer, which fit what we knew about him. And the mother was a socialite. And that's literally what she was. She basically, she went around and ran parties and stuff like that. So my wife is very proud of that fact that her grandmother is a socialite. She feels the same way. But here we have it. So this is Sue's birth father, who does give me permission to show him. This is him back in the day, and a lot of people says he looked a little bit like Desi Arnaz. And her grandfather was a judge. Her grandfather's, on the other side, her grandfather's on her other side, her grandmother's father was actually an attaché, one of the first attachés to Europe.
Okay.
The first attaché to Europe. So he would actually go over to Europe and build up business for the United States and stuff. So this is back in the 1930s. And this is actually a picture of her grandmother as a baby in a passport photo over here. And that's her great grandmother. And this is actually one of her grandmothers. So if you look here, you can actually see, it may not be as obvious in the pictures, but there's such a semblance. Her half sister was walking around her uncle's house one day and saw that picture and said, "Oh my God, Dad, look at that. That's Sue. That is Sue." And she sent it to her, and I'm like, and she sent it to me. I was like, "When did you take that picture?" Because it looks just like hers when she was younger and stuff. So it's really cool. And of course, this is my dog. So
yeah,
I have to include that picture of my little Mabel. And what's cool here is we were able to take that original picture. This is Matt Kelly. This is one of her half sisters with her boyfriend, and Sue's actually in the background here. But they were able to actually meet. So she was able to tie everything back together, and now she has 3 half 4 half sisters and half brother. So it's actually cool. And these are her 2 half sisters there. So it's really cool. And it's all because of DNA. I mean, none of this would have been anywhere close to possible either side without DNA and being able to use that to confirm things. So that's basically my presentation part.
Yeah.
Let me see.
That's really awesome. How many people did you need to test to?
So actually, what's funny was I used to also, besides just asking people and paying for tests, I probably paid for, oh good Lord, 10 tests. I remember they were $200-300 back then.
Yeah.
So I nowadays it'd be like, okay, $60.
Yeah.
Here, I keep so I actually keep my closets behind me, so that's why I have a background there. But I keep about 4 or 5 DNA kits in my closet just in case I ever need them.
Yep.
Because I want to just pop them in. But I actually used to also go to people when I looked at the family trees and I saw a line that looked interesting. I would actually send them a message and say, hey, by chance, have you taken a DNA test? Or are you interested in taking a DNA test? And I would send these out on Ancestry all the time. What was funny was about 2 years ago, I got somebody to respond to me and they said, yeah, I just took one. I looked at the results. They were second cousin once removed, exactly where I thought they might end up being. So it's like, man, you could have taken that a few years ago and it helped me. It's like,
yeah, I think that is something that people find hard sometimes, is to reach out to people they don't know and ask them to do a DNA test. What's your best tips for doing that? How
reaching out?
Yeah,
really,
yeah, reaching out to a person you don't know and ask them for a DNA.
So I'm an introvert. I do have problems doing presentations and stuff like that. I have to get myself in that mood and stuff like that. When I used to do presentations, I would actually go up into the hotel room and turn off the lights and sit in the dark for about half an hour before I did presentations, because I was drained if otherwise. But somebody like me has learned how to be able to do these sort of things. You just have to do it. You just have to reach out. You have to talk to people. You have to learn some detective skills. You have to kind of, what's scary is sometimes I know more about these people than they know about themselves. And one thing you have to learn is kind of back off. Just you don't say, oh yeah, I knew that. Oh yeah, I knew. It's like, oh really? Oh, interesting. It's like, so you ask a lot of questions. You have to ask a lot of open-ended questions. People love talking about themselves.
Yeah.
I enjoy doing this Sue presentation because I love talking about her. I love talking about her and the work we've done and stuff like that. So it's really a fun thing to talk about. But that's really what you have to do. If you aren't willing to reach out and talk to people, get over that shyness. It's all they can do is say no.
Yeah.
And practice with somebody who's a third cousin or fourth cousins. You'll never see them again. Who cares? If you find somebody if you're a little more nervous, practice with some people. I actually used to do Amway at one point. I got sucked into it, and it was really, Amway is a multi-level system where you try and sell people to other people and you try and get them to join and stuff like that. It's a horrible thing. Don't ever join Amway. Don't ever do these sort of things. But there's a lot of those type of things. But the one thing that they did there was they taught me how to talk to other people and just practice. Do it, try it, practice. Luckily, I was only there for 3 months, and I said, forget it. I learned, but that was the one thing that was positive out of that, and I do try and take positives out of everything that I do. All my groups and stuff. It's like if you come at things in a negative manner, yeah, there's always going to be some problems, and particularly in my area, because I'm trying to keep up with whatever the DNA companies are doing. So there's literally, there's days I don't sleep because I'm trying to fix things up. And sometimes I try and kind of wait a little bit longer and let things fester, because sometimes 2 days later, the company realized they made a mistake and fixed things themselves.
They fix it back. So yeah,
yep.
Yeah.
So that's really the key thing is just practice, just try it. Take small bites. Don't try and do everything at one time, because I know people was like, okay, I'm on 23andMe, I'm on Ancestry, I'm on MyHeritage. I have to upload the gen match. It's like, no. So you've tested an Ancestry. Look at Ancestry. Play with it. Look at it. Try it. Upload to Family Tree DNA. Try it out and look at it. But don't try and do everything at the same time. And look at one project that you're trying to. What are you trying to solve? Start with that. Try and solve one small problem first. And I can see myself up there like waving my hands.
Yeah, try one.
This is really weird doing it this way. It's like you watch yourself earlier, and so I got my screen up here with everything, so I can kind of see the questions and stuff like that. But,
yeah. So if people want to try out DNAGedcom, where do they find it?
So you go to www.DNAGedcom.com.
Yeah, we will put the link here in the comments as well, I think. Yeah.
And on the you have to sign up for it. And once you do that, you create an account, and then you then subscribe. And so there's a subscription page. You can subscribe through PayPal, or you can subscribe through Amazon. Amazon does take a little bit of more time because they don't send us all the information we need, so we have to update that on our end manually. But it's $5 a month for silver, or $10 a month for gold. And gold, what that does is it allows us to actually pay for programmers to help us do additional things. So I've had other programmers and stuff coming on board, work with me for a few months, and or even pushing a year, and then John and I kind of take it over and work with it again. So that helps us a lot with that. And then we're actually moving to a cloud now, so hopefully this will be the last time I have to move a server. I've actually been on 7 different servers now. This will be the 7th time I've moved servers, because they grow, they get old, and stuff like that. So now I'm in the cloud and Amazon. So hopefully this will never be a problem again. But
yeah. So DNAGedcom.com, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we do reach out to support at DNAGedcom with any questions. We do give, if you're like, I hate this thing, I don't know why I did it, send us an email, ask politely. Don't tell us you're a piece of crap. Why did you take my money? It's just say, it's like, I didn't understand it, and or I don't like it. Can you refund me? And we're perfectly happy to refund at any point. We're also happy to help you and try and get you started. We actually do Zoom sessions with people who have some questions and stuff like that. I'm happy to do that. We particularly do that for gold members, but we do it for silver members too. We try and give additional help to our gold members, but frankly, I don't go look and see, oh, no, I'm sorry, you're a silver member, I'm not going to help you. We help everybody, so.
And one thing is, when you have this this client, it actually that you keep all the data on your own computer. You don't have the data on a server, but you have it on your own computer when you play around with it and do your tools. And
right, so you actually see it here. It actually gets stored in your own folder, and it has a database file, and that database is SQLite. So that those who are actually programmers or want to get into more details, you can open it up and look at it yourself. It's completely open. It's based on the data that I was receiving from the DNA company, so it's not normalized particularly, but I'm happy to answer questions and help you get the data out that you want to. A lot of companies have actually worked off of this set of data. So early on, we actually had companies, I know Charting Companions, Genome8 Pro, DNA. There's a Node XL utility. So there's actually even New England Ancestries takes the data and you upload it, and they work with that. So there's a lot of other companies that use our base data. And I'm happy to talk to other developers if you want to use our data to do additional things. I'm happy to work with you.
Yeah, I like the idea when the developers of the different tools works together as well. I use Genome8 Pro a lot, and I can get the data really nice using your tool, and then I can use your data and put it into DNA Painter really easy. So it's like you guys make it really easy for us.
Yeah, so well, we try and make it easier. I can't do, I mean, what Johnny does, I can't do a lot of that stuff, and he does a great job. Why do I want to repeat exactly what he's done? So I make use of what he's already done. And then there's things where it's like, I need to do such and such. And so we'll actually say, oh, we can work on that. So Ove asked, does the account keep the info you upload? So we're private. So the data is actually stored on your own computer. You can upload some data, but the majority of what you want to do on the website, you should be able to do in the client, particularly once we implement this people feature. So we're going to add this people feature where you can actually look at kits. It stays, so once you've downloaded it to your computer, it will actually stay on your computer, and it's and you don't have to go then turn around and download that data again. So that first time is painful, but because we download down to a lot of the companies, they say, well, we go so much faster. Well, they download to about 20 centimorgans. We download all the way down for like Ancestry down to 6 centimorgans, and at about 10 centimorgans, you probably, if you stop at 10 centimorgans, that's about a third of your matches are 10 centimorgans or above. So if you triple or quadruple the amount of time some of these other tools take, that's a better comparison. And you can always stop it at 20 centimorgans and stuff too. So
yeah, because it remembers. So if I start out and I take everyone down to perhaps 70 centimorgan, then next time I can go down and get everyone down to 50 and then to 30, right. And that's you don't have to get it all over and over again. Right.
So when you're running these clusters, you typically stop at 40 centimorgans, and I recommend don't try and do a huge one. Do those smaller ones. Look at what you have, and then you're starting to learn some things. Then expand out when it makes sense. And that goes for also what you're trying to learn in DNA, but it also is in terms of what you're trying to grab at one time. Try and grab some smaller chunks at a time. And the good thing is you can run as many kits as you want. This is your subscription. You can use it for all of your kits, as many kits as you want over and over again. You can rerun things. It's still the same cost. If you have a cousin down the street or a friend down the street and you want to run their kits, it's your kit. It's your process, so you can use it for as many kits and stuff that you want to.
Yeah.
The only thing we ask is if you are making money, that you subscribe at the gold level, because if you're making a lot of money on doing DNA, then we'd ask you to help share the cost, and so that we can make this. We want to be able to provide some free tools for people, but we need to be able to make a certain amount of income.
Yeah.
Likewise, if money is a problem, I've given free subscriptions to people too. So if that's a concern, our goal is to help as many people, not to gather as much money.
Yes. So if you have any questions, please write them in the comments also. Do you have any more slides that you want to show?
No, I don't think I really have anything more.
Yeah, because then I have some more questions for you.
Good.
Because I have been working with IT for many years, so I'm into the IT and tech stuff, and I want to know if there is an app, or except DNAGedcom then, that you use on a regular basis, perhaps for documenting your matches or your genealogy, or you keep like a research log or something to organize everything.
So I haven't. I'm trying to build that. That's what I'm trying to build into some of the new tools and stuff like that. I actually, I would keep pieces of paper, and I was generally just doing that kind of stuff, keeping it on paper and keeping it in notepad and stuff like that. I try and build the features and stuff like that in terms of building into the tools and stuff like that. So when I do other cases, I do actually do some other cases, but I make sure people understand I'm going to work on your case, but I'm not going to finish your case. I'm going to help to give you some information, but my goal in working on cases isn't to solve the problem. It's to understand different problem sets so that I can build better tools. So I do want to be able to build, and this is sort of some of the new features we didn't have the ability to do this before because of the libraries we were using. Being from the technical vantage point, we weren't able to do that between a Mac and a Windows. The tools that were allowing us to do cross-platform didn't give us a lot of those grids and stuff like that. We do now have an ability to do that that's supported by both sides. So now we're planning on adding a lot more of those pieces.
Yeah. How hard is it to have to build both for Mac and PC?
Now it's not so bad. There's very few things that can't be done on both. At one point, I had Swift and I had C#. I had C# on Windows and I had Swift on the other, and so it was literally totally reprogramming something when I went from one to the other. And I had paid somebody to do the Swift version of it, and it got to the point where it's like every time I was changing, I had to go out and pay somebody else to do the same thing. And the Mac version was always at least a month or two behind, if not further behind. So that's when I went and built on a platform called Xamarin, where actually I can build both at the same time. But then you end up with some things like the browser pieces. When you do web logins, that's Windows specific. So I have to fix some of those things. So there's some small things that weren't on one that are on the other. But it's really gotten a lot easier and supposed to be getting better.
Yeah, so we got a question from Max. What is the future of DNAGedcom / genetic family?
I think I really talked a lot about that in the presentation, where we want to be able to show you the data that you actually are working with and work with that data in a consistent manner. So when you're looking at a match, you look at the match the same whatever company you're at. We do want to do more. Genetic family actually integrates well with Wikitree and with a lot of other companies. We wanted to be able to integrate more with family search, but we've had a problem with it, that they're not pushing that side anymore. But we're looking at basically integrating things a lot more together in the genetic family side. They really are two different products. They don't integrate unless you tell them tell you to upgrade from DNAGedcom to genetic family. They don't really work together. So using one versus the other, they're really two separate products, and they're meant that way. The reason being, genetic family is more of a shared piece, whereas most people are used to DNAGedcom being very private, and that's a big concern in the industry. So we wanted to make sure we kept the two very separate. So you knew, if I'm working with genetic family, that means I am uploading something to a shared website, which means that in theory, that's a little bit more shareable. Now, we do have a lot of privacy features in this, and you should only see what you would basically be able to see in the first place. But we want to make sure that that's distinction. If you're working with DNAGedcom, you're on your computer, you don't upload it to the website or to genetic family. It's completely private. Nobody can get to that data that you've collected and done anything with.
Yeah. So next question is, tell us something about yourself that most people don't know.
Myself, well, I have two boys, and the one made it through 7 years of college and finally graduated, and the other is actually in his junior year. But I actually also I've been doing computers since I was in high school. I actually did computers with my dad's company, and I created Lotus 1, 2, 3 spreadsheets. He's a drywall company, so they did commercial drywall. So actually, literally, that was my job in high school, was to go out and hang drywall and spackle. And I didn't spackle as much. That's putting the tape and stuff on. I normally sanded, but I did hang a lot of the drywall. So that was my first job, and I probably wouldn't have made it to college except for that job and the fact that I helped my dad build a spreadsheets that allowed us to do very quick and easy estimations. So we're able to bid on more jobs, and the more jobs that you bid on, the more jobs you end up winning. And we got really good at building those Lotus 1, 2, 3 things, such that he was able to bid, and he knew exactly how much it would end up costing. So.
Yeah, and we have Leanne Kruger says Lotus 1, 2, 3 was great.
Yes, it was. I still hit that slash button every once in a while. Even So I used to use VI, so I hit the /S sometimes, and I hit semicolon Q to quit. I'm like, no, I'm in Notepad. all you Unix geeks know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, VI, love it. Not. Yep. And we got a question from Rolf. He says, since data is stored locally, tablets, iPads, mobile phones, DNAGedcom isn't for those devices. Could cloud storage be used for the future port to other devices?
So the product I use is actually fully capable of running on a tablet or an iPad. I do have a Chromebook here.
Oh, we can't see it. Yeah,
yeah. Where my goal is to be able to get it to run on a Chromebook because it has the storage capabilities. But there really isn't. The only reason it's not is for other purposes. We could probably write genetic family to be able to run on those other tools. I just personally find that I might want to look at the data, but to actually have it go out and back and gather the data, it would be a lot of work on something like that. And you're not typically you're walking around with your phone. So that is something I've looked at, and the geek in me wants to do. John's like, no, don't spend the time adding to that. But it could be done. I just don't find that it's particularly useful. DNAGedcom tends to be used more for the tougher projects. It's some of the things you're really digging more deep into. There are tools out there if you just want a quick, dirty, boom, boom, and not spend any money or very little. There are tools out there that can do some things pretty quickly, and if you have a second, third cousins, that's probably all that you need. If you're doing this over and over again, you don't want to go pay for additional tools and stuff like that over every time you use it, because if you put it on the cloud, then somebody has to pay for those features on the cloud. So that's really what ends up being the case. If I made it cloud-based, the other thing is MyHeritage does not allow you to run anything from a cloud. You cannot give your password to somebody and have them store it in the cloud. They will actually come down on the company for doing that. So that's why you don't see any of those companies, doing that kind of stuff. They do know how I do this. All the companies know how I do these things, and they understand the password stored locally, and I act like a web browser, so they're okay with it. They don't like it, but they don't hate it. That was a quote that we had at one point from somebody, one of the companies is, I don't like you, but I don't hate you. I'm like, okay. Fine. You don't have to like me, but just don't hate me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, if you hate me, let me know. I'll make it so that you don't hate me. I don't want to be hated.
No. And one action that someone's watching now should take if they want to start using DNAGedcom, I guess it's go to the website and.
Yep, go to the website. Our documentation is currently a little bit behind, but just go to the website, download the files, play with the clustering right now, play with the CLM, because that teaches you a lot more about the chromosomes and stuff like that. Because I think people have gotten used to the concept of what I call pedigree triangulation, which is basically taking two matches and how they match up. But people with a little more complex cases that need to go a little bit further down into the chromosome levels. And I think people are eventually going to catch up. What's funny is a lot of the things that we did 5, 6, 7 years ago are coming back for those who are having problems. A lot of the easy DNA problems are getting solved and can be solved with some of the simpler features. I want to get it into more of the tougher and more detailed projects. So a lot of the things that were old are becoming new again. So we're kind of working our ways back around to a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, and you also have a Facebook group that people could join. Yeah, it's called DNAGedcom Users Group, right?
Right.
Yep.
So you will see the things most people post on there is when they have problems. Really, your best bet is to send an email to support, and I'll actually pull up here the Facebook group. There we go. And I'll put that in the chats also. But that's a great place to go and ask questions and stuff like that. And also, if you do have issues, sometimes like Ancestry would go down. 23andMe recently made a change, and they were down for a couple of days, and I let people know, okay, yes, because instead of 100 people emailing me saying 23andMe is down, you post, hey, is anyone else having problems? Yeah. So we're able to quickly identify it. I do want to look at a feature that hopefully, one of the things I want to look at is anonymized information, so that if somebody is failing to get a connection to 23andMe, for example, I want to see that. So I'm looking at ways to gather that information so that I know what's going on.
Yeah, we're having a problem here. Yeah, that's good.
And Mags, I don't think there's anything else I'm working on. Nothing like MITA-Y DNA or anything like that. So I do have one other project that I'm working on, which is MITA-Y DNA. It is the old Y search, MITA search. Let me pull that up there and share that. Where am I? I'll share my screen here real quick. It allows you to upload your Y DNA and mitochondrial DNA data. Is that showing?
Yep.
Okay. So it allows you to see your to compare with other companies. So there's, besides family tree DNA, you obviously need to work on upload there. But there's other companies, YSeq, and a couple other ones that are doing similar things. And so we're able to look at the data and compare across other companies. And then you may have somebody who unfortunately has passed away, and so you can't upload. So they may have uploaded the NatGeo or other places, and we're able to work with a lot of those other companies. So Sorensen, Genebase, Oxford, some of these companies, they don't have the data anymore. And so if you don't have a chance to upload and test the family tree DNA. And did you know actually Ancestry had a Y DNA mitochondrial DNA test at one point, surprisingly.
Yeah. And what they removed the data, or what happened to the data? It was destroyed?
We actually, you can actually download it. So we actually give you the steps.
Okay.
We tell you if you had tested there under
yeah.
DNA, you will have a link to it, Y DNA and mtDNA tests. And you can actually download those results, and then you can upload them. And then you have a place to compare. You can compare with other people who tested at Y DNA. So unfortunately, some of us have lost some of the folks, and losing Y search and MITA search was a big loss in the community. So we want to be able to allow people to do comparisons there.
Yeah. And then the final question is the question for the guest next week. And I still don't know who's coming next week. So.
Well, that's no fun. Okay. So what was the reason for you to start working with DNA? Sort of the similar question, but why did you start learning and work with DNA? What made it interesting to you?
Yeah.
Kind of along the same lines as Mags, and I appreciate that question, Mags. That was a nice, quick and easy question for me.
Yeah, great question. So I think we will wrap it up, and thank you so much for being here, and thank you for making these awesome tools for everyone that we can use and that helps us in our genealogy research.
You're very welcome.
So,
thank you.
Have a nice evening. Or it's afternoon at your place right now.
It's afternoon still.
It's evening here. It's evening here. So
it's 5 o'clock somewhere, so it's time for a drink.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you to everyone who's been watching, and have a nice evening and afternoon, and wherever you are.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye.